Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday, June 8th, 2022, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. We have so many of your important stories that we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Hello and thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots Magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and we bring you the best of LGBTQ plus news, entertainment, and support of our community.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson. Let's begin by welcoming anchor Faye What? She is a radio and television personality and has a popular blog and YouTube channel aiming to unite the L and the G together. She's a hostess and MC for many South Florida events, an animal advocate, and owner of Faye's Fur Family. Also, make sure you catch the Faye What Show, the first LGBTQ plus morning show, Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern, online or your smart television. Good evening, Faye.
Good evening, boys. You know I'm still cleaning the gay days off me.
Out of what crack?
Every crack. Yeah.
Teresa hasn't gotten them all yet?
Oh, dear.
Wow. All right, let's welcome anchor John Hayden. Wow. John's been a journalist for 27 years and now works for several South Florida outlets, including SFGN, South Florida Gay News, as community editor. Wow, I got a promotion. Wow. Okay, you're paying for dinner tonight. Covering politics, arts, and philanthropic organizations. Much of his career was spent as a celebrity journalist. That means you're a celebrity? In your own mind. Got it. Covering the stupidity and scandals of Hollywood. John's interviewed nearly every big name in TV, movies, and music, and once spent an evening watching a porno movie, a movie with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. God save the Queen. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much, Faye. If watching a movie with the Queen doesn't say celebrity, I don't know what does. I mean, come on.
Right. Hey, after the show, will you explain this intro to me? Because
we'll have to talk about it for sure.
Right. Now, let's welcome Maxx Fenning from Prism. At 17 years old, Maxx founded this amazing nonprofit organization that works to expand access to LGBTQ plus inclusive education and sexual health resources for LGBTQ plus youth in South Florida. Now at 20, Maxx is firmly outside of my dating pool. He is also a senior at the University of Florida and serves as Prism's president. Good evening, Maxx.
And he just celebrated her birthday. Happy birthday, Maxie.
I did.
Tucker Carlson's on the phone right
Italy.
now.
Exploding.
Wow.
Oh, that's right. You're just back from Italy.
Yeah, I am.
I can't wait to hear all
it was a little bit of a copycat vacation after you all went. I had to follow.
Great.
It's all right. We did it better.
Oh, wow. This is a news show, people. Can we up our game and our behavior, please?
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, let's welcome anchor Dale Stine, my fierce defender, knight in shining armor here. With a background in music and the arts, he's a well-known photographer, famous for his photographs of internationally acclaimed DJs, drag personas, and other entertainers, including our very own Faye What? He is presently the director of music ministry at Unity on the Bay, as well as moderator of South Florida's largest LGBTQ plus Facebook group, Miami Gay List, which can be found on Instagram as @GayListOfficial. An activist with multiple LGBTQ plus organizations, Dale is also currently vice chair of Miami Beach's Human Rights Committee. Good evening, Dale.
Why, thank you, Maxx. And we are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Wednesday, June 8th.
Well, we begin tonight's broadcast by queering up the USA View. Michelle Visage's first public pulse comments on RuPaul and what she told the gay community is next. It's June 12th, again, for the 6th time. No person in the LGBTQ plus community doesn't know what June 12th means. Like December 25th is Christmas, or October 31st is gay Christmas, June 12th is just as important. but for very hurtful reasons. It's about hate. It's about guns. It's about religion and culture wars and so many more terrible things. But above all else, it's about sadness and grief that hopefully one day will be more tolerable for all of us. It's about Pulse. 6 years ago today, I was at Gay Days with my friends from RuPaul's Drag Race, the travel brand, and countless friends across America in Orlando for one of the world's largest LGBTQ plus celebrations. There was so much joy. We were a year into gay marriage when the White House shocked us all by turning rainbow colors. Remember that? At Gay Days, my Drag Stars at Sea director, Edward Sotomayor, was at my side. At 34, so loved by so many people, not the least of which was basically every single queen from every single season of RuPaul's Drag Race. RuPaul had come twice to support me at Sawmill Camping Resort to turn it into a nonprofit LGBTQ plus community, which, by the way, we accomplished. And Top Hat Eddie was close friends with the cruise's matriarch, Michelle Visage. She is as good an LGBTQ plus ally than any of us could ever possibly ask for. In all that celebration, I could have never imagined that days later, just days later, Eddie's life force would be extinguished. In the early morning hours of June 12th, Eddie sent me a video message from the dance floor at Pulse, approximately 12:30 a.m. He had an animated top hat on his partner's head, and he made a joke that his people were out. He meant Latino, mostly young men. Just shortly after that, gunshots rang out. The rest is history. I was at Orlando Regional Medical Center at 12:30 p.m., approximately 12 hours later on June 12th, and Eddie was the first name announced by the worldwide media as a victim of the Pulse massacre, a massacre aimed at gay people. To remember Pulse, those 49 who perished, the 50 that were injured, the city that fell to its knees, and to a worldwide LGBTQ plus community that for the first time understood we really do have people that hate us and will kill us with guns. Queer News Tonight remembers June 12th. So I am showing you tonight, I'm showing you what Michelle Visage did that very day. Entertainers say the show must go on, and that's exactly what Michelle Visage did the very day of Pulse. We cried on the phone. Just hours after the tragedy, she and many RuPaul queens had to take to a stage for a show in Minneapolis. She could barely do it. She breaks up doing it. But then something magical happens in the sadness and the grief. She reminds us of something we have to remind ourselves and have reminded ourselves so many times before because we're LGBTQ plus. She challenges us. What's next? Pick yourself up. They can't win. So we remember Pulse today by remembering what Michelle Visage said in this grainy video taken from behind the stage at that show, just hours after Pulse. She sent it to me. I will show it to you now. Remembering Pulse and Eddie Sotomayor.
Old with seduction, and Minneapolis has always been such a great city of love and fun and celebration, so we're so happy to be back. Now this is normally the point in the show. I welcome everybody. Introduce myself. My name is Michelle Visage, and these are my tits. And it's usually the point in the show where I go through a bunch of things about our community and how important RuPaul's Drag Race is. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody who has made Season 8 and all of RuPaul's Drag Race. Season 8 is the highest rated season yet of RuPaul's Drag Race. And it's because of you. And why the show is important, yes, it's important for our community, but it's important for the kids who didn't know. And I say kids, you're all kids to me, I'm 47, so you know, everybody's a kid to me at this point. For me, it's a lot of people in the community have a problem with it kind of mainstreaming a little bit, and I say that's not the way to look at it. It'll always be an LGBT show first and foremost. But the fact, yes, but I am a heterosexual cisgender ally, and for me, I see the importance because I was a kid who had nowhere to go, who was bullied and didn't fit in, and this show, for young girls like me who are that, or look at me and want to be a female drag queen, or understand and relate to some of these queens, it's a safe place for them. They have some place that they can go. They don't feel weird, they feel like they belong. The same thing for the trans kids and the gender fluid kids and the gender queer children and people who just don't really know who they are and understand. That's why our show is so important for mainstream and for our community, and thank you so much for making it what it is. And then I usually go on to talk about women supporting women and gays supporting gays because it upsets me so much when I see women fat shaming and slut shaming and taking each other down. But I want to put that on hold tonight in lieu of what happened today in Orlando. And I'm trying to get through it without sobbing because I lost somebody very, very dear to me. And I just want to say that nobody can keep us down no matter what. And the more we're forced in this little box, the more we rise up together. Nobody has ever been able to silence our community, and drag queens in particular. They have always been the marginal section of the gay community, the outcasts, and the ones that nobody talks about, nobody wants to have anything to do with. And you know what? Tonight is also the Tonys, so in the words of Hamilton, we will all rise up together, we will unite. And I'm telling you, in the wake of this tragedy, we are going to become stronger and we're going to fight harder because you see, we are nowhere near done. So, for me tonight, for all the victims out there, for everybody in particular, we are going to take donations the whole night at the merch table. Even if you don't buy our merch, in lieu of tipping, we don't want your tips, please, even if you're going to give $1, put it in the bucket at the merch table, and at the end of the night, we'll have buckets here that you can donate. Anything that you can give, we're going to give to the Plus Victims Fund. We are going to show solidarity. Our little ring pops, somebody gave them to us, and tonight was our kind of start. Like, let's do ring pops and solidarity. It isn't shit. But for us being on the road and being queer performers and me being the mother to all of them, it means our little something. So when you see us all have these, that's what it meant to us tonight. And it means everything that we could be here with you tonight. And I have to ask you all, your love is what's going to keep us going tonight. So donate whatever you can, give whatever you can emotionally. And I am going to sing my heart out tonight and dedicate this show to my friend Eddie Sotomayor. I love you so much. Thank you.
You never forget in your life exactly the feeling, exactly the place you were. I mean, and the shock.
That
And
someone
it's-
had so much hate.
And yeah, and it's just, and it still feels so real because we're still living it in so many ways. And wow, that footage from Michelle Visage, I have a new respect for her that I love Michelle Visage, but a new respect for her that I didn't know was possible.
She walks on stage just hours after Pulse to deliver that in front of the crowd. First off, she was so so conflicted because what do you do in this national tour of all of these people that had had tickets for eons to come, and they have the obligation to do the show and watch the show, and how do you have a fun, comedic and entertaining show with what we were facing in Orlando? And I applaud them for going on stage and doing the show. My God, how professional. And for her to deliver these words, 6 years later, and these words are more important today than they were 6 years ago. When I first saw it, of course I was numb, but I couldn't appreciate the words that were coming out of her mouth in the way that I can today. She just did an incredible job, and I'm so happy. It's a wonderful way to commemorate Pulse in this anniversary. The other sad thing about this is, for me, I feel really incredibly selfish and almost ashamed that I don't want this anymore. I don't want to think about this anymore. I don't want to care about this anymore. I don't want to shed any more tears anymore. I don't want to think about Pulse anymore. Everyone says you grieve in your own way, but I want to end my grieving. And I just can't. Every time this happens, it just comes right back.
You relive it all over again, every single year.
Over again. I could tell you stories that would just curl your hair. And then we watch what happened in Buffalo and what we watched in Uvalde. Yesterday, McConaughey says in the White House press room, amazing, by the way, a la Michelle Visage.
I mean, he was just full on heart.
Showing the red Converse shoes,
the green
identifying, the green ones, thank you, and basically saying these shoes were incredibly important because it was the only thing that could identify the girl that was wearing them. Because these weapons are literally completely obliterating and destroying the person.
I'm so tired. This shouldn't still be happening. It only happens here. They say, well, what are we going to do to fix this? Why don't you look at every single country who does not have this problem? It is such a uniquely American thing.
And starting with Columbine, which is a long time ago.
Long time ago. And since then, so many other tragedies.
1998, 1999.
So almost,
it's older. This problem's older than I am.
Over 20 years.
It really is. It really is. I mean, we were just at Gay Days, and there was a beautiful party at House of Blues, and there was metal detectors to get in. And I said, wow, this is our new normal?
But don't you, in a twisted way, it makes you feel more comfortable? Maybe.
Yeah, it's still sad that I need that.
Sad, but I mean,
it doesn't make me feel comfortable. And what's so sad is that this is the only life I've known is a world where this is commonplace.
It's incredible to me. By the way, I compliment our production department for this beautiful moment. Beautiful. As I'm reading the messages of Michelle's moment on the stage at that performance on June 12th, on the day of the Pulse massacre, 1,500 mass shootings since it. I will tell you for sure. We had a funeral ceremony at Robarts Arena, the largest arena in Sarasota. Gigantic crowd turned out for it. We marched in the St. Pete Pride Parade that night of his funeral was St. Pete Pride Parade, and we began the parade, and hundreds of people marched with the Eddie delegation, including all of his family, and thousands, and when I say thousands, maybe 10,000 people had cardboard pictures of Eddie in the crowd as you came down. I will never forget being in the St. Pete Pride Parade through that march, June 26, 2016. And we would get to points in the parade where we would start to hear people chant, Eddie, 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 and it would get louder and louder and louder. And it wasn't until about halfway through the parade that we realized that in St. Petersburg, they have free speech zones. And all of these religious conservative zealots would be there screaming that the community got exactly what they deserved, and all the hateful things that you hear about queer at events like that parade. And what the entire block was doing was blocking them out so the family and the delegation from Eddie couldn't hear them chant. I don't want to face this anymore. And we faced it ultimately multiple times just in the last couple of weeks. Is anything going to change? I was just at Pulse for Gay Days. Those pictures you saw were my personal pictures that I took at Pulse just this week. You're seeing some of them there at Pulse nightclub. We all said in the weeks and months after Pulse, June 12th, 2016, love wins. I can't honestly tell you that I believe that today, 6 years later. Can't.
Harder and harder every day.
It is just, I have a 20-year-old next to me who says, I know no other life than this.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had a single week this year with less than 4 mass shootings. There's been almost 250. There's only been about 160 days that have passed this year. So there's been almost a mass shooting every other day. And it's such a resolvable issue. And that's the sad part is this has a very simple solution that nobody wants.
There's way too much money behind
Made
it.
so political by one of the parties.
And by money. It's all money.
The people who say not to make this political are the people
they're
who,
the ones who do it. And the minority, politicians representing a minority of the population.
And I want to note that the day before the anniversary on June 11th, there is going to be a National Day of Action with March for Our Lives, which spurred about from the Parkland shooting, which is only a stone's throw away from where I went to
This
school,
broadcast studio too.
and here too.
Yeah.
And nationwide, so you can find on the March for Our Lives website, you can find a march near you, and I can assure you that there's going to be one somewhere near you. And I encourage people to do that.
I'm for sure, I'm sorry, John, were you going to add something?
No, that's
right. I'm for sure, before we move on, to say I think we're respectfully remembering Pulse on June 12th. To watch this glimpse behind the scenes, behind the stage of Michelle Visage's reaction, unscripted, just hours after Pulse is a motivating factor to me. Her words are incredibly, incredibly important and valuable. I sit 6 years later and wish I could go back into a time machine and say, now, Michelle, I'm coming from 6 years in the future. This is what's going to happen. And watch her face and hear her reaction of what actually happens from these words and our actions and love wins and what we thought we might be able to do and change. So I guess from my seat, I hope her words are possible. I agree with her that we understand heartbreak. Our community understands heartbreak and fighting and standing up. But it just continues to seem like it's an unwinnable fight. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But today, that's how I feel.
And you're allowed to feel that way.
Yeah.
So we think of Michelle Visage's words, pick yourself up, right? And rise up together.
Yeah. We remember Pulse and Eddie Sotomayor.
And we move on and queer up South Florida gay news. And again, security is an issue. Stonewall security becomes bigger issue after a threat in West Palm Beach. A threat of violence against South Florida's LGBTQ plus community has been stopped, but people are still on edge. A man has been arrested in Canada for making a very credible threat to Pride on the Block, which was held in West Palm Beach over the weekend. So, where does that leave security for Stonewall next weekend? In this week's SFGN, online and on stands tomorrow, I look at the cost of security for the festival. Wilton Manor's police chief, Gary Blocker, tells me when you have 40,000 people in one area, it's imperative to have resources available on the spot in case of emergency. Better to have them and not need them than the other way around. But that costs money. Last week, we reported that security costs for Stonewall are jumping 80% from last year, and organizers weren't given the total until just 3 weeks until the festival. Now the incident in West Palm Beach, which involved a SWAT team, undercover officers in the crowd, Miami police, New York City police, and the FBI, has refocused attention on safety and its price. As Wilton Manor City Commissioner Chris Caputo wrote last week in SFGN, rising costs could make parties like this and Halloween's Wicked Manor celebration price prohibitive. And you can read more on the threat in West Palm, as well as the security issue in this week's SFGN online and on stands tomorrow. And thank God this was prevented in West Palm over the weekend, but there were 10 mass shootings over the weekend.
Yeah.
And in addition to the security price, which, I mean, at this point, we kind of have to say, okay, we'll pay it, but just give us more notice. Tell us what it's going to be. I think that's what it's going to come down to.
80% though, John? Holy crap.
But it's not just that. You have to think insurance. I mean, after the accident last year in the parade staging area that killed someone, thank God it wasn't a terrorist attack. It was just a terrible accident. But insurance with all these shootings and accidents like that are driving up the cost as well. I mean, it could literally, they could kill Pride simply by pricing us out.
So Al, I ask you that. Do you think that something like this would obliterate prides and events like that?
Oh, it's almost insidious. It's so dangerous. And the reason is because, well, first, there is a constitutional argument, a First Amendment argument, that a city has responsibility to protect for public events and demonstrations. It is a municipality responsibility, not an organizer of an event's responsibility. Okay. Because you could make a very good argument that this is the way you would curtail speech. Donald Trump in Washington basically was managing Black Lives Matter demonstrations by saying you can't, and aggressively managing against it. There's a very good constitutional argument against that. This is insidious from the standpoint of how can a nonprofit be able to pay the kinds of exorbitant expenses that we're talking about. And one other issue that I think is really, really significant at play here, just simply because approaching the Pulse, this Pulse story that we have done today, I reread the timeline. And it's a tough thing to read, but there is a timeline, minute by minute, starting at 1:58 a.m. through the conclusion, a minute by minute of what happened. It is interesting to me that the gun nuts, and that's what I call them, the conservatives that have no moral souls, and the gun nuts, their argument is, like Governor Abbott, everyone should carry a gun. It should be open and everyone carry a gun. That does not create safety. And Pulse proved that. There was an armed police officer at Pulse. This assailant that killed 49 and injured another 50 was attacked by the police officer with a gun within the first 2 minutes of the firing exchange. The police officer had to withdraw, not because the murderer had a gun, but because of the high-powered nature of these AR rifles. The police officer was outgunned and had to withdraw. SWAT was there in 10 minutes at Pulse and was so pinned down because of the high-powered nature of the weapons that existed in Pulse, they could not get to him. And it took hours to find an access of removing an air conditioner and ultimately a bulldozer going through a wall to get into the club to help free many of the people, which we told in the story didn't happen until about 5:30 in the morning. It is a lie. It is a lie. Guns do not protect people. Faye, you carry a gun to a club and an AR shooting begins to break out, you're as good as dead.
I'm dead.
I mean, right. and we look at Uvalde, which is the same. I mean, the police there it took them over an hour.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that the good guys with guns do not protect us from bad guys.
And don't have the guns that will even hold a candle to the guns that some of these folks have.
And they say, we want to make constitutional carry or open carry, and DeSantis has talked about making this a constitutional carry state, even with everything that's happening with us having the second largest mass shooting in the country, the 5th largest school shooting in the country. What we know is that states that enact constitutional carry laws and let people carry their guns without a permit, that leads to a 13 to 15% increase in gun violence within the next 10 years.
And that is a statistical fact. It is science, but we know from COVID, science doesn't matter.
Science doesn't exist.
That is a statistical fact that is immediately dismissed
to a certain part of the population.
Yes,
and what I'm thankful for though is now you actually have GOP donors who are actually saying we do need to actually do something about this.
You go ahead.
No, I'm going to talk about this because it's not coming up for a couple of weeks, but there's going to be at UCC Church here in Fort Lauderdale. Reverend Rogers is the minister there. They're going to have Gun Safety Sunday on June 26th. They're going to be giving out gun locks, because if you put a gun lock on your gun in your home, you significantly reduce the risk of accidental shootings, teenage suicide, and a murder or gun injury by domestic violence. So they're doing that. And the thing is, this program, which started with 10 gun locks to give away, is now being formatted and pitched to go throughout all of Florida's UCC churches and the 5,000 churches in the North American Fellowship. I'm not saying it's the solution. I'm just saying people are trying to do the right thing. And if people would just get out of the way, they could do it.
You know, one final thought before we move on. I connect the dots that we're watching in a very confused American society. We talk about white, older, privileged men fighting against what we watch is going on, of having minority growth, Latino growth, gay growth, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We talk about toxic masculinity going on. We talk about rejection and violence, both in word and action, against Asians and against women and against gay and against Latinos and against Black. And we're starting to watch a common denominator. And when we talk about this story that John does about Palm Beach, aimed at gays, and we talk about guns, Uvalde, and Buffalo, and even Pulse, we're in a situation where 1,000, I just read this week, 1,000 mass shootings. In the last 1,000 mass shootings, do you know how many women were the shooter?
Zero.
Zero. It's a connection, it's a dot connection that we have to go, there's something going on in our society that is amiss. And Tucker Carlson can scream to high heaven, white community is being attacked. But the results is white community is also the ones that are really are the attackers. And we have to be willing to face that as a statistical fact. Why is it happening? And what are we going to do about it? If not, Pulse is laissez-faire, as is Palm Beach.
We continue with queering up trans rights. New study shows how many trans or non-binary people are in America. A new Pew Research Center poll shows that the number of people who identify with a gender other than the one assigned at birth may be higher than previously thought. On average, 1.6% of the adult population in the U.S. identifies as a transgender man, transgender woman, or non-binary. Adults under 30 are far more likely to identify as other than cisgender, with slightly over 2% identifying as a trans male or female and slightly over 3% identifying as non-binary. 44% of adults now say they personally know someone who is trans, up from 37% in 2017. 20% of adults say they know someone who is non-binary. This increase in visibility is beneficial in the fight for gender-affirming care and transgender rights.
Well, it's an interesting survey.
I think what's also interesting is specifically not just the increase in the percentage of trans people. And let's be clear, there's the same amount of trans people. It's just people are able to feel affirmed in identifying as trans. Mm-hmm. And what's really, really interesting, even more so, is the increase in people who identify as non-binary, who don't identify as, who don't identify, I'll stop talking with my hands, who don't identify as transgender, like a binary transgender. And the reason why is because of language, right? So they did a study on detransitioning. They followed trans youth over 5 years, and they found that, first of all, very few of them detransitioned. That's not really a common statistic. But of the people who did, they didn't detransition to being cisgender. They actually started identifying as non-binary, which is language that they didn't really have at the beginning of the study, the same way that they do now. Mm-hmm.
Interesting to me, the process of the 90s, the first decade of the new millennia in 2000, one of the keystones of LGBT acceptance was if you knew somebody that was LGBT, specifically if you knew a gay man, generally, but LGBTQ. And they showed statistically that if you knew somebody is LGBT, and you use the anecdotal example, well, I've got an uncle that is gay, and so therefore I like my uncle, so maybe I like a gay person.
Yeah.
And the more that Americans knew somebody that was LGBT, the more acceptance, and the numbers went up and up, and Tucker couldn't hold it down anymore because we all knew somebody that was gay, and we liked them, and they were okay, and they're not these evil, horrible people that we have been told.
Not grooming pedophiles?
Grooming, well, they're trying again on that.
Right, yeah.
But that's the interesting thing about this study is the growing number of people that know someone that is trans or non-binary. The end result, you can't keep the tide back. You just can't keep your finger in the dike forever. And the more trans people you know, you'll go, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
And as a result, that increases acceptance.
Was that a pun about something in the dike? Could you explain that?
And one last thing that pops off the page for me in this study, if this study is accurate, first off, it's probably underreported because even Pew says, now a lot of people are afraid to even participate in the study to admit this, and Pew admits that. But one of the interesting things is if this study is correct, that means that if you take it at face value, that means that there are 6 to 7 million trans people in America. I've never heard that number before.
And that's
ever.
incredible.
It's incredible.
And there's more, for sure. So
Yeah,
that warms my heart there.
And just to go back to, let's just keep praising RuPaul for a while. But to go back to RuPaul's Drag Race, because it's viewed by so many people, straight and otherwise, the number of people who have come out as non-binary, trans, or whatever is really so inspirational, and that helps so many others feel courageous enough to come out. But it's what we say, the numbers are going to be higher than we'll ever know.
That's a really interesting point to me. Obviously, a lot of experience with the RuPaul's Drag Race. Once upon a time, RuPaul was absolutely emphatic. When the show started, no possible way you cannot be trans, because the belief was it ruins the illusion that these are men as drag queens.
Yeah.
And when that voice change began, RuPaul's voice change began, and the show's philosophy voice began to change. Look at all of the participants of RuPaul's Drag Race that all of a sudden, oh wait, let me tell you something.
Right. I've had an evolution.
Right?
But when you go to a drag show, a brunch here, wherever, there are always
and who
trans.
cares?
I mean, it's drag because it's all drag, right? It's all drag.
Wait, somebody should tell RuPaul.
That's a good line.
They already did, right?
And I think what's interesting as well is I love seeing the stages when someone has an LGBT person in their life, especially trans people, because everyone that is in my life has a gay person in my life, because here I am. But when you have a trans person in your life and seeing the stages of that transphobia breaking down, first they use them as sort of this token. They use it to be like, well, I know a trans person, and
I'm cool,
and I'm cool, so I know. And then they try to use it to justify transphobia, and then they start thinking about it more and more, and then
they learn.
Wait, Max, I will tell you in complete honesty, when I came down here 3.5 years ago, you just described Al. I came down here without, I don't think I overtly knew anyone that was trans. And later I find out that, of course, I did. Al, you're a mouth-breathing moron. But beyond that, people were put in front of me, and I began to go, gosh, the problem is not the community. The problem is my attitude. And you know who sealed the deal for me on what you just said? Is Raji Narayan. I watched Raji transition from botched, and she uses this word herself, in terms of how people describe her as being monstrous
and a freak,
Yeah. And the revolutionary process that she goes through. Nobody would go through that. Nobody would volunteer. Oh, let me live my life this way. It was the need of who the person really was. And when I began to realize that, everything for me began to change. And I'm proud of that, to be honest with you.
You should be.
Yeah.
And
someone at your age to learn something new?
Got to get it in there, right, girl?
Somebody needs to send this to Bill Maher. After all those rules crap that he did last week, someone needs to send him this, because his brain must be exploding, for sure.
Exactly. All right.
Oh, my Lord. Well, next, let's queer up business. Chick-fil-A workers make pride display out of sauces. It's Pride Month, and that means companies around the world are turning everything rainbow to pander to the gay community, often while donating to anti-LGBTQ+ causes. One company that is at least consistent in its lack of support of Pride and continual financial support of organizations that are against our community is Chick-fil-A. A conservative evangelical company bases its corporate policies on the Bible, and while the corporate level is strictly anti-LGBTQ+, not all employees share that view. Recently, a video was posted on TikTok of a Chick-fil-A in Austin, Texas, where an employee lined up the sauces at the drive-thru window in a rainbow. Several TikTok users have commented that they do or have done the same while working at the chain, but that management would change the sauces back to the corporate-approved order. Either way, we salute the LGBTQ+ or supporting employee who is working behind enemy lines.
I love corporate ordered color.
That's just a laugh.
Tickles me so much.
Funny.
Chick-fil-A is a public health hazard. If you've ever been driving north on Federal Highway, you almost come into at the Chick-fil-A. You almost rear end someone, and not in the fun way, because like they're backed up a block from the thing. And other people have done it in cities as well. So I say ban Chick-fil-A, not just for the cholesterol, but for the public safety. Yeah.
No, I'm so upset. Well, I'm glad I moved to Pompano because there was a Chick-fil-A.
Nobody has ever said that phrase before.
The reason why is because the Chick-fil-A is being built across the street from my old place, and I don't want to have to drive by that every time.
Yeah, but
I've never been to
They just built a Chick-fil-A right near my house. I'm never going to go there. It's never going to happen. I'm sorry, But like these let's talk to the LGBTQ+ people who work at Chick-fil-A. Kids with all the jobs out there. You get 50 million jobs out there. Why would you go work at the hate sandwich place? I don't understand.
Because they want Sundays off.
Because you
want Sunday off because you party Saturday night. Good point. My bad.
It's the sauce. It's the sauce thing. They want to align the sauces. That's very, to make a TikTok video.
Don't you love how gays are? We have to figure out a way to make everything happy and proud. We're just going to align the colors.
To me, that's the most interesting thing about this story. No matter what we seem to face, no matter how much oppression or hate, with the exception of guns, we can't fight guns, but no matter how much oppression we get, our ingenuity just seems to be so obvious, so incredible, because we're going to go, oh, all right, this is how we'll deal with that. And whether it's straight hair at the high school where you can't talk about gay, or it's lining up the sauces in rainbow to celebrate Pride Month at Chick-fil-A, we seem to figure it out.
Yep.
And I love the ingenuity of LGBT.
Or handkerchiefs. And
by the way, Chick-fil-A, not that you care, but we promise you, if these employees get fired, we're going to be reporting it on Queer News Tonight. We're coming for you.
I think what's also important to note is, we covered a story a little over a month ago about Fox News and the way in which the environment of LGBT employees at Fox as a whole wasn't really reflective of, obviously, Fox News. And what's interesting is how many LGBT people there are in Chick-fil-A versus, obviously, the broader.
Well, there's your answer.
There it is. Now I know. Okay. Now I'm in the know.
That's very saucy. All right. Next, let's clear up sports. History as Justine Lindsay becomes NFL's first openly transgender cheerleader. When you think about transgender acceptance, you don't normally think about either football or North Carolina, by the way, my home state. Thankfully, that is changing as Justine Lindsay has just become the first NFL cheerleader who is openly transgender. Lindsay said that the coach of the Carolina Panthers Top Cats cheerleading team, Chandler Lanouette, knew about her gender identity, but chose her for the team based on her talent. In an Instagram post, she wrote, quote, "The Carolina Panthers organization is an excellent one that supports all people, white, black, yellow, trans, straight, etc. At the end of the day, myself and the other 29 members of the Top Cats made the squad fair and square. So what if I'm trans? So what if I'm paving the way for those under me who are scared and afraid to take that step? Because it is not easy to do when you have ignorant people making comments that didn't go through the process like the rest of us. I will continue to be that pioneer. Thank you. I will continue to inspire and help my African-American beautiful trans sisters until my last breath. So please mind your manners and understand that if you can't say anything nice, please keep it to yourself." End quote. drop mic.
Isn't
Wow,
that-
awesome.
yeah,
What
really.
a trailblazer. Oh my God, Lindsay is incredible, incredible. I hope that those cheerleaders are treating you right and taking care of you, girl, okay? Because most of the time, women step on women. Women are catty and women are mean to each other in such kind of places, except cheerleaders are hot. And I used to date them and sleep with them. Anyway, but not the point. I really hope that they are taking care of Miss Lindsay because she's a badass. And she got in because of her talents.
Yeah.
Go figure, you know, and also to the person that was in charge that decided for her to be, that she had the talent to be one of the cheerleaders, kudos to her as well for not overlooking, taking her for who she is.
You know, today when we reviewed and looked at this story and the announcement of her making the NFL team, you know, this is a very masculine sport, football. The cheerleaders are designed. There are cheerleaders for a very specific reason historically at a very masculine football.
Boobs and ass.
Right? Okay, there it is. And to have a trans person, the great value of becoming the NFL's first openly trans cheerleader is it challenges that notion of what cheerleading is all about. I suspect the girls are going to be big allies of it because at the end of the day, they're also women.
Yep.
And they don't want to be marginalized because they have tits and ass.
Completely. You know, I have a very close friend of mine that is now a flight attendant, and so she's staying with the girls and everything, and she's saying that all the women are just loving her and loving on her and protecting her.
Yeah,
all right, and that's what we have to do for each other. Women out there, take care of the trans women. We're all women. Period. Done.
Yeah.
You know, the last story we had the sauces lined up in the rainbow flag. The person who did that was subtly courageous. She is boldly courageous because she is not only just amongst the women that are going to, you know, she's going to rely on literally for support. She also is going to be facing, you know, 60, 70,000 fans 10 times a year, maybe more if they make the playoffs, which ain't going to happen. But she has to be out there and face that. And she has to face everything, not just the haters on Twitter. She's going to have to face the haters that are going to be buying the great seats down on the sidelines. So good for you, girl. Yeah, good.
Absolutely. And let's echo John's point about being boldly courageous. You're representing the African American community. You're representing the LGBTQ community as a whole. You're representing the trans community. So that deserves having your name said again. Justine, Lindsay, congratulations to you. All right, next we are going to queer up gay culture. You can now see the largest display of the AIDS Memorial Quilt in a decade. The National AIDS Memorial is celebrating the 35th anniversary of San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein's decision to hang the AIDS Memorial Quilt from the mayor's balcony at City Hall with a special display of the quilt. Over 3,000 of the 3-foot by 6-foot panels will be on display at the National AIDS Memorial Grove in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park on June 11th and 12th. The entire AIDS Memorial Quilt includes over 50,000 panels, honoring more than 110,000 individuals who have lost their lives to AIDS. John Cunningham, CEO of the National AIDS Memorial, said in a press release, quote, "The quilt is an important reminder that the HIV/AIDS crisis is still not over, and there is much work to be done, particularly in communities of color where HIV is on the rise in many parts of the country." End quote.
Yeah, and especially in Florida, Miami-Dade County being one of those.
Has anybody seen the quilt?
I saw it in 1993. When I went to the March in Washington, which was one of the most exhilarating experiences ever.
Wow.
And it was a huge display even then.
Proudly, you know, one of the principal organizers of that event was Nadine Smith, who is now executive director of Quality Florida, who has just made Times 100.
Yes, she did. I just adore Nadine.
Yeah.
But it was so moving. You know, it was one of those, you March on Washington, I remember I was with a contingency of friends and we were all very hip, hip, hooray, I'm gay, yeah, very much, you know, that mode. And then when we got to the quilt, it was immediately so somber. And it was just quiet, the entire thing, you know, because 93 is still in the thick of it.
Yeah.
So it was a very, it was quite an awesome.
When you look at
I was just going to say, I did not remember that 50,000 panels representing 110,000 lost. That's just amazing. 3 by 6. I mean, I remember how large it was, but 50,000 panels.
Well, and we
It's
have to
impossible. Oh yeah, I was just gonna say it's impossible to put it all together again. This is the
Yeah.
largest display about you can have, because sadly there are just so many. But it's very powerful when you see it. A friend of mine who's older and was in the Vietnam War, likened it to the first time that he saw the Vietnam Memorial.
Wow.
And there were just, it's just name after name after name after name of people who died. And that's about how it ranks.
Well, and I need for you guys to remember that and understand that AIDS is not cured yet. We haven't completely annihilated it yet. And there's still people dying, all the time. My wife constantly tells me that, hey, AIDS is still killing our community. It causes many to get cancers, yeah, they're living with AIDS, but then they get something else, I mean, it's not over.
Do you think, it crosses my mind that we're in a different time in remembrance and respect? We've reported at Queer News Tonight more than 70,000 LGBT Americans were killed by the pandemic of COVID-19. Do you think we'll ever do anything like what we did in HIV and AIDS? Look at, we've talked about Pulse in the anniversary. In gun violence. Do you think we'll ever do anything about all of the gun violence victims and related things? Are we just a different society today than we were in the 90s?
We're numb. Totally. We're a little numb to it. Isn't that awful?
You're numb, and also I think that we have, all of us, I speak for myself, we have a much shorter attention span. Because we're a social media age, and we were not a social media age in the 90s at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I had my first cell phone in the mid 90s or something, and it was like some brick of something.
Dale has told me, by the way, so many times what a nice experience it was in your hand to write with a feather in it.
I have a name for you, but I'm not going to say it on the air because I'm a decent queen.
You're
a gentleman.
Because you're a decent lady.
Yes.
All right.
I'm
All right.
a gentle queen.
So next we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine in supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ plus religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch this.
Hi, my name is Misty Eyes, and I'm the Director of Transgender Services, Women's Services, and Education Training at SunServe. And Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We love you, Misty Eyes. Misty Eyes is going to be in bed with me soon on the Faye What Show. Yeah, maybe it'll be on the show. Maybe it'll be in my house. I'm not sure. Anyway, look out for that.
Does Teresa know that?
She'll know later. It'll be when she's at work. So, folks, that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then please help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates and share the news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in the many groups you're a member of. Tonight's stories about our community deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
And if our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these type of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. And that is the passion of the Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Faye What, John Hayden, Maxx Fenning, and Dale Stine, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure